Hey guys, what's up? It's Kevin for the win, and we're back for another edition of Diablo 3. Today on the channel, we are taking a look at the Witchdoctor set armor known as Zunimassa, which is a Fetish Army build. Not a very good armor. I'm just going to throw that out here right off the beginning. So here is what is the Zunimassa set. 2-piece bonus is your Fetish Army lasts until they die, and the cooldown of your Fetish Army is reduced by 80%. You and your pets take 3% less damage for every fetish you have alive. And the 6-piece set bonus says, enemies hit by your mana spenders take 15,000% increased damage from your pets for 8 seconds. So it's a pet build, and the pets don't do a lot of damage even with the mana spenders. So in order to help this build a little bit, we're going to be using Soul Harvester, and we're also going to be using the Belt of Transcendence. That way we can summon a bit more fetishes to our field to help build our army a little bit more. Now, for the rings, I'm using the Compass Rose and the Ring of Emptiness. The Zunimassa's String of Skulls is actually a placeholder. You should use Denial, but unfortunately RNG was not kind to me. I was not able to get a Denial. You could also, in turn, put Denial in the cube. Unfortunately, I don't have any Denials. Was not able to have any on drop. For our skills, we're using Piranhas, Perherondo. For Fetish Army, Legion of Daggers. That way we can have more Fetish Army on our side. So that will help a little bit in terms of procuring the 6-piece bonus. Spirit Walk, Honored Guest, that way we can get back mana because we do spend a lot of mana in this build. Soul Harvest, Vengeful Spirit, Gargantua, Restless Giant. This is where a big portion of our damage is coming. For another mana spender that we're going to use Fire Bats, Vampire Bats, as opposed to Cloud of Bats. For our passives, we are using Midnight Feast, as you saw, Confidence Ritual, Grave Injustice in the Kanai's Cube, Staff of Cleopatra, but you can also use Denial in place of that. Mask of Jerome, Ring of Grandeur, because we are, not Ring of Grandeur, I should say, Convention Elements, that way we can do a bit more damage. I'm going to do a Great Rift. This is a not very good armor, so I'm going to do Greater Rift 45, 55, and 65. At 65, it already starts to struggle. This is before any sort of optimizations whatsoever, so I do not really recommend using this armor. This is actually the worst armor for the Witchdoctor class. There's so many better options out there. There's always one armor for each of the classes that's just utterly terrible, and ironically for Zunimassa, that happens to be the honor it gets for the Witchdoctor armor sets, or set armors. Alright, so when you get into the Greater Rift, the first thing that you're going to want to do is cast your Fetish Army, then cast your Perherondo, as well as cast your Gargantuas. That way they come on the field and start doing damage. Now, because of Restless Giant, they are going to become enraged whenever they see an Elite Pack, which allows them to do more damage. Now, in order for your pets to do damage, you are always going to have to cast a Mana Spender. So the only 2 mana spenders really you can use on this set that will spend a lot of mana is the Perherondo, which I recommend doing to pull in mobs together, particularly Elite Packs, and also using Vampire Bats. This is pretty much what you could do. You can also use a Mantle of Channeling in your shoulder. That will increase the amount of damage. However, keep in mind with Mantle of Channeling, in order to procure the 6-piece bonus, you have to every 8 seconds stop casting Vampire Bat Cloud for the bats in order to then reset the 6-piece set bonus for this particular armor set. It's very weird in that way because remember, mana spenders only deal an increased 8% damage to pets for 8 seconds. So you got to constantly time that window of how long you have. It's not very easy to keep track of considering how many mobs are on the screen. One of the things I recommend for this particular armor, since it definitely underperforms, is that you definitely want to make sure that you are constantly having your Soul Harvest at 10 stacks. That way, at least, you can do the optimal amount of damage possible, which isn't a lot. Unfortunately, this armor is kind of on par with how Firebird Finery was before Season 23 of Diablo for Season 22, where it's just got some very confusing skills that need some significant reworks. 8% increased damage, really, for the 6-piece bonus is not a lot of damage, considering that Fetish Army deals very little damage, and although Restless Giant Gargantua does a lot of damage without having, like, decay in your Kanai's Cube, it just kind of doesn't even do that much damage to be able to effectively. For all intents and purposes, this is a F-tier armor. I would not recommend using it. There's just many better options. Honestly, you could probably even go Legacy of Dreams pet build and be able to probably get more damage out of it than this particular set armor. But for the sake of the fact that we have to cover every armor in the season, and this was the last armor for the Witchdoctors that we had not covered, that's why I'm basically doing it. Now, in terms of optimization for this particular armor set, there's a couple of routes that you could go. You could, in theory, if you wanted to, if you could find the belt and the pants, and you want to forego the Belt of Transcendence, you could go Captain Crimson and then just go put cooldown everywhere to be able to get more damage out of this armor set. That's something that I'm going to try out in Season 23 of Diablo when I have more time. Unfortunately, when it came to working on the last couple of armors for the season before the season was over, I didn't have as much time to build towards building these armors and optimizing them that way. But you could go Captain Crimson route and put all your investments into cooldown to be able to try to get more damage out of this. Alternatively, for this particular build that I'm showing you, which the link is in the description, I would recommend on your helm 6.0% chance for hit crit chance. That's my recommendation. On the gloves, my recommendation would be crit hit damage 50%, crit hit chance 6.0 to 8.0% if possible. I also recommend attack speed. The higher the better, but if you got attack speed 6, 7, or 8, any of those will do. Preferably you want 8 or 7. That'll help a little bit to increase the amount of damage that you're able to output because you can attack a little bit faster, which will help with Vampire Bats just a tad bit. The rest of the things, you want to power up your Gargantuas wherever there is a slot where you can get Gargantua damage to 15%. Also, you want to get Fetish Army to 15%. If you have the offhand, that's the Zunimassa offhand weapon, and it's not denial, my recommendation would be to get the Fetish Army damage to 25%. That is a roll that you can get that is innate to that particular offhand weapon only. So definitely re-roll for that, and you will get that. And just that way they can do a little bit more damage. Alternatively, you could swap out your gloves, but you have to play around with the ring options, because then you have to use the Zunimassa ring, which really doesn't do anything for you, and you would then have to lose probably one of the rings, like Obsidian Ring or the Zodiac. But what you could do is you could swap out the ring, and then you could have the ring in that position, and then switch your glove to put a Tasker and Theo where the glove is, to be able to have your pets attack faster. Again, being able to attack faster with these pets is not going to really do a whole world of help for you, because Gargantuas generally attack slow anyway, even when you speed them up, and Fetish Armies just don't do a whole lot of damage on their own, even with the 6-piece bonus. So you could do that to kind of help this armor out, but it's definitely not really going to benefit you too much just based on how much this armor underperforms. But those are viable options to kind of get the most out of this armor. Honestly, the amount of resources that you're going to spend and the amount of not blood shards, but the amount of shards that you're going to spend just to be able to get this to work and perform well on low tiers is not, in my personal opinion, worth it. As you see, I have to time a lot of windows here, so it's like I have to cast Vampire Bats, Piranhas, then I have to count down 8 seconds to see how much damage they do. Fortunately, because we're on a lower grader, if the Gargantua is a Restless Giant, does all the damage, they're able to one-shot the Rift Guardian. Also, for optimization, as you're going to see here in a moment, it's absolutely necessary that you have a Enforcer Gem. And for the Enforcer Gem, I recommend that you have it at level 80 or higher, even for a greater of 45, which kind of sounds unheard of, because you need these pets to deal a lot of damage and not take a lot of damage. Honestly, if you could even get to 100 before even starting the armor, I would recommend it. It's going to help a little bit, but it's not going to do too much. As you can see, that's a very bad clear time for a Greater 45. This is going to be a Greater 55. Same strategy as before. Going to cast the Piranha Tornado because there's a thing. Then I'm going to cast Vampire Bats, cast the Gargantua so they could do damage, also cast my Fetish Army, and the Restless Giant Gargantuas are going to be able to take out pretty much your elite packs for you. That's pretty much your Gargantuas are going to be doing most of your damage. The Fetish Army, I honestly am still trying to figure out what's the purpose of them, because they don't really even take out low mobs at very good fast speeds, even when you optimize it. So, you know, if this is a push build, I would say it's like an F-tier push build, It's the same strategy. I'm getting my Soul Harvest up, then Piranhas, Vampire Bats, and then hopefully the Restless Giant Ruin will trigger with my Gargantuas and do some damage. And that's pretty much the cycles that you're going to have to go for. Keep in mind, because you have the Mantle of Channeling, and because of the 6-piece bonus with this armor, you have to stop every 8 seconds channeling your Vampire's Bat. Because if you don't, then you're going to lose the 6-piece bonus, and then you have to reset it again, which is incredibly annoying. There's just so many complicated windows that you have to pay attention to with this particular set armor, which just makes it underperform, and you're not getting a great amount of damage as you see out of this. This is Greater 55. This is like Torment 11 or 12 difficulty. Usually armors that are this souped up and invested in, you know what, crit hit chance and all these things deal a lot of damage. I have my Fetish Army actually invested. I have Gargantua damage somewhat invested in here. And you see, it takes a while just to kill even the low-end monsters, which is why this is, like, underperforming. When it comes to the Witchdoctor, in Season 22, the best performer, obviously, was the Mundunugu set, which is the Spirit Barrage Witchdoctor. And they saw at Blizzard that it was overperforming, so for Season 23, Grasping Demise has been nerfed, and they changed it around a bit, so it doesn't deal as much damage. And it's got some significant limitations to pretty much slow it down. It was overperforming, as they said, which it is, because that was pretty much the only armor primarily people on the leaderboards when they were playing Witchdoctor would use. Everything else pretty much took a basically took a backseat to everything. I mean, there were some Jade Harvest, because Jade Harvest is significantly good, but does push significantly slower, and it's not as fast, but it does push high greater. That saw some leaderboard placement, but primarily Witchdoctor Mundunugu. Also, Gears of Dreadland, which is another armor that particularly for the Witchdoctor class was nerfed as well. I talked about that in great detail, as well as Mundunugu, on Monday's video, which was the Roland's Legacy. That's available in the playlist, so you can just click on Diablo 3. We've covered every armor mostly for Season 22 of Diablo. There's only one armor left after this one, which is the Talraja set, which I'm going to be doing on Friday of this week, which is a Flashfire build, which is another kind of underperforming armor that suffers kind of a similar fate to Zunimassa, in that it's just a very complicated amount of steps to just do damage with it, and it's a lot to pay attention to. But we'll be covering that. It's still significantly better than Zunimassa, though, ironically. So this is one of these armors where, if the developers are listening, I would highly implore. Obviously, it's not going to be for Season 23, but maybe for Season 24, assuming that Blizzard does support Diablo 3 past Season 23, because remember, we got Diablo 2 that is coming, the Diablo 2 Resurrected, and we don't know necessarily where Blizzard is going to invest time in. We don't know necessarily if there's going to be seasons for Diablo 2, if Blizzard's just going to focus solely on all their efforts developing for Diablo 2, which makes sense, because that would be, even though a remake, the newer game, which probably would want to be focusing all their attention into. So that's something definitely that could potentially happen, which would mean then Season 24 Diablo might not get support. Maybe they might not continue to support it. Diablo 3 is a very old game at this point. Way, way, way over. I think we're going on 8 years so far with this. That was available on consoles, maybe even longer on PC. It's been quite a while since Diablo 3 has been out, so I mean, in theory, it would make sense for Blizzard to just go and now support Diablo 2 Resurrected, but that's assuming that it has seasons and there's other things that they're incorporating in there that are new features for Diablo 2. There are new features. We haven't gone into a great deal specifics, I should say, in regards to, we know certain things have changed and it's supposed to be a true remaster of Diablo 2, which is generally Diablo's players' preference. Everybody holds Diablo 2 in high regard, and then when it comes to Diablo 3, some people love it, some people hate it. You know, it's a very split audience. I enjoyed Diablo 3, but remember, I started Diablo 3 when it came out on the Switch, and by then the auction was not available for players on console. They had taken that out. That was something that upset a lot of Diablo 3 players, because obviously they were able to make money in real life, because they would just trade away things on the auction and sell things via internet and would make money that way. When they took the auction out, a lot of Diablo 3 players got incredibly angry and pissed off at Blizzard, which is why then they say Diablo 3 sucks. Now, we don't know necessarily if the auction is going to be available in Diablo 2, if it's a true remake in the sense that it's like just, true to the whole thing and a true 100% remake with no changes, then the auction would be available in Diablo 3, or Diablo 2, I should say. And then Stone of Jordans would be incredibly expensive, and people would probably sell them on secondary market and whatnot. It's a tough subject because the reason why Blizzard got rid of the auction was because people were making money off the game, and that was never necessarily intended. But also remember, now developers have come under a lot of scrutiny for the loot box mechanic. A lot of places in different countries outside of the US have banned even loot boxes and stuff, so they consider that technically gambling. So having the auction in Diablo 2 like it was in Diablo 3, originally, and also why they took out Diablo 3, it's because developers will get a lot of heat from countries and then say that, oh, well, it's gambling and everything of the sort. And I mean, there are some games and different communities that still get away with stuff like that. Like, look at Warframe, for example, where people sell their armor pieces that they get an extra stuff for platinum, and they make money that way, and they sell platinum that they have for money and everything of the sort. So, you know what? Happens in every game. There's a lot of people who want to put a stop to selling certain items on secondary market. Case in point, look at a different game, but that had loot boxes, and then they got rid of the loot boxes for blueprints, but still kind of loot boxes in a way, which was Rocket League. Well, now you trade blueprints, and you just trade the actual things. That had a secondary market where people were selling the items via trade, and they would sell loot boxes on all these things, and even trade keys around, and they would make a ton of killing, a lot of money off of Rocket League. So, it's gotten to the point where developers have come under a lot of scrutiny by, countries and, legislators and whatnot, because they don't really see, they see this as a form of gambling, and it's kind of another one of those black guys where, yeah, kind of gambling in a way, and it's just, it's a very sensitive subject in the gaming community as to, auctioning off in-game items that you get. But Diablo, Stone of Jordans in Diablo 2 were like a currency that people actually used 20 years ago, and they would, that's how people would make and trade things. And Stone of Jordans were like your hot commodity. It would make you a lot of money back in the day. So it should be interesting, Diablo 2 resurrected, as to what really they changed. They got rid of that. If they kept it in, oh man, it's going to be a lot of people trying to make a killing off of Stone of Jordans and secondary market value, and, trying to get people's money via things, because Stone Jordan's drop rate was, that's crazy. So it'd be interesting to see where we're going back to old Diablo ways in the community and auctions and all that. But it's also interesting in the sense that Diablo 3 is such an old game. Will Blizzard, with Resurrected coming out, even actually support Diablo 3 anymore, being so old? Or do they just kind of abandon and say, well, that's the last season, and just kind of just cycle out, not make anything new in terms of cosmetics, but then just kind of cycle seasons to earn older cosmetics, which I'm fine with, because there's several older cosmetics I didn't get. So it should be interesting. We have to wait for Diablo 2's release to really know what Blizzard has planned for the future Diablo 3, but I would say after Season 23, I would be generally shocked and surprised if we do see a Season 24 of Diablo, because I think usually we'll have 3 months of Diablo coming out, or 3 months of another season. Let's say we don't have as of this recording, I don't have an official release date for Season 23 of Diablo. So let's go on the theory that Season 3 of Diablo will probably start either the first or second Friday of April, because we're already at the end of March, and they would have already said via news ticker or something that Diablo 3 Season 23 starts, that Friday, this Friday coming up, which would be the 26th, which they have not done as of this recording. Keep in mind, I record these particular videos a little forward, or a little beforehand, so this is me talking to you from the past, because I put these up, record these a little beforehand. But yeah, so Season 23 of Diablo, we don't have an official date. So my guess would be probably the second week of April is probably the best bet. The last time we did Season 22, it was the second Friday at that month as well. Sometimes they do surprise and do the first one. I don't think there's so many things going on the first week of April that I don't think Blizzard's really just going to pull the trigger and say this is it. But if they do, we have it in April. Pretty much we know it's starting. So we have it April, May, June, and then probably around July would be the end of Season 23 of Diablo. And then by July, I would say we're already looking at either Diablo 2 Resurrected being released. Because remember, they showed it off at BlizzCon, obviously the digital one. So BlizzCon, I'm guessing the game looked very finished in my opinion. It wasn't like super alpha building or anything. So my guess would be we're probably going to see Diablo 3, or Diablo 2, I should say, Resurrected, available on PC and consoles. Sometime, I would say, probably around early or late July into early August, no later than September. So then it becomes a question of would they really invest in another season? Maybe we have Season 24, and then Season 24 will probably be like the final season of Diablo 3, and then probably, I mean, this is just my educated guess, I think developers would move on to Diablo 2 and just finally let Diablo 3 rest in peace. But regardless, it was a really good run in terms of seasons. Depending what they do really will depend on what I do in terms of Diablo content on the channel. My plan currently is if we do get another season of Diablo 3 past Season 23, I will cover that as well as Diablo 2. I will probably cover Diablo 2 a lot more than Diablo 3 because Diablo 2 is the more heralded game. And pretty much at this point, since we have covered every armor, there's certain armors that when you focus them on the season, they'll get like reworks and stuff, and they'll be worth covering again. And then there will be armors where why retread and make another video on something that we've already covered in Season 23. I'm going to go back and do all the armors again in Season 23. Particularly, I'm going to start with the ones that have had significant changes and significant nerfs. And then I'm going to go through the top tier armors, and then we'll go through the A tier armors, and then we'll go through the B tier armors, and then everything underneath. And that's kind of how we're going to write out our content for Season 23. At least that's the plan right now. And as you saw here, it took quite a while to clear that particular Greater Rift. Quite a lot of work that went into that. Again, I do not recommend using this armor. I hate to say it. This is kind of like how Firebird's Finery was in Season 22. This armor needs reworks. If we do get a Season 24, they got to change the 6-piece bonus and the 4-piece bonus because it just doesn't deal enough damage. This was a Grey Rift 65. I had to kind of struggle. Although a decent kind of clear time. This could be much, much better. Also, keep in mind, I'm not using Deny on the Cube because I didn't get it to drop. You could, though, put Deny on the Cube in place of Staff of Cleopatra and see. You might get a little bit more damage out of it, but it's not going to be super significant to the point that then you're just dominating Greater Rifts with this armor. This is F-tier armor, guys. There's no way to play it. Let's see if I can get at least something good loot. See, I was trying to get the Denial again, and I still was denied getting Denial. All right, so unfortunately, I did not get any good drops. And this is pretty much all there is to Zunimassa. Cast your Fetish Army, cast your Vampire Bats, Piranha, Gargantua will do most of your damage, Soul Harvest in between. Thanks for watching. Make sure you give this video a like and subscribe. I'll see you Friday for the next video.